and look at it as we go through the session, that'd be fantastic. The first one is, why is brand important to our work? Why is having a strong brand, or why is having a brand important to our work? Okay, so each of you in your context, think about it as the need for a brand that is recognizable, that is differentiated, that is unique. Is it important at all? Do you need it? Is it just something for big organizations or even startups? Do even startups need a strong differentiated brand to be successful? So that's my first question, right? And the second question is, do we communicate our brand? Do we communicate our brand effectively in the marketplace? Okay, so the first question is to recognize the need for a brand, and maybe your organization says, listen, we already have access to the market that we want to support, and so we're not going to focus on the brand so much because the market is captive, we're just going to focus on our value proposition, and that's fine, right? You want to focus on your story. But in the long run, any brand that is thinking of the big picture, they're going to be thinking about how are we going to be relevant and recognizable in the marketplace, where there's so many others who are trying to offer the same solution and the same service to the same target audience, okay? So what I'm going to do is going to step away from that brand building piece, because we're not talking about brand building anymore. We're going to be talking about how you communicate it. And the process of communicating is very, okay, we've got another colleague who's joined. Do you want to, I just want to pause before I dive in. Murad? Minai, do you want to welcome them?
Hi, Murad. Thanks for joining the webinar.
Hi, friend. Sorry for being late a bit. We were in a meeting.
No worries. If you don't mind, could you turn on your camera and just give us a brief introduction of yourself, your role, and the company and what you're doing?
Hi all, my name is Murad Kusanov. I'm leading the team. We're developing, leading the team Agromat. We are developing a number of AgTech products. So one of them is AgSat. So I'm happy to be here and happy to be among you. And sorry for interrupting the webinar. So
no worries. Thanks, Murad.
You have my full attention now.
No, thank you, Murad. Thanks for joining. And I always say better late than never. And we've just started, so it's fine. I want to invite Aisha, if you don't mind, Aisha, if you could quickly give Murad the two questions that I was setting up for you. Can you help with that?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is why is a brand important? And I believe you were just about hitting the second point on the head.
Right.
But yeah, the first one is why is a brand important for us as an enterprise?
Yeah, the first question is, why is the brand important? And the second question is, how do I communicate my brand? How do I communicate my brand story? How do I communicate my value proposition? So today we're going to be focusing on how we communicate our brand proposition. Okay? We use the method called storytelling for that. And I know all of you would have heard of storytelling as a method, storytelling as a process. I'm just going to try and unpack that for you in the context of principles of storytelling. So it's going to be a little scientific, it's going to be a bit technical, but it's going to be something that you can take away as a toolbox to become more intentional about crafting your story or crafting a value proposition. So when you go out into the market and you want to meet somebody and you meet them in the elevator because they're not giving you time, and you get 30 seconds to talk about who you are and what you do and why they should do business with you. How do you fill that 30 seconds? And that's the science of storytelling, to use the elevator pitch to be able to tell them who you are and what you do. All right? So I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to go straight into the topic for our day, and we will take that step by step if it's okay with you guys. Mm-hmm. So please, first of all, tell me if you can see my screen. Yes,
yep,
we can.
You can see it.
Okay. Okay, the second request I have, Minai, is I want you to be my eyes and ears because I cannot see the chat window anymore. Because when I'm presenting, I only see the screen. So if there's any comments, I am inviting all of us to unmute and ask the question, interrupt me at any time. But if there are any comments in the chat window, please go ahead and ask me, stop me and ask me that question for me, and I'm going to rely on you. That's okay.
Sure, definitely.
Okay, great. So the session I have for you today is about 90 minutes. I'm going to try and do that slightly quicker if I can, just so that it doesn't get too long and monotonous for you. But I'm going to be titling it The Weekend Language. And by weekend language, I mean it's not weekday language. So I often use this example. I say, when we are born and in the first 2 years of our life, we are able to communicate to our parents and our family so clearly without words. We get exactly what we want, we get their attention, we get their affection, we get their, whatever we want from them, right? But they send us to school, and then over the next 12 to 15 years, they teach us to speak like robots. And then when we come into the industry, we are told that if you don't speak like a consultant, you're not efficient enough. So all consultants speak alike. You have to sound intelligent. But the focus now is to understand how we can bring back our unique voice, our unique ability to communicate, to deliver a story, and move away from the weekend language, which has now become dull and boring, and to move into what we're calling the weekend language, which is colorful, it's personal, it's got character, and it's got creativity, and it's authentic and intentional and human. And that's where we're encouraging people to look at us, right? So if I ask the question, and I did ask the question when you guys were logging on, I said, what do you guys do? It's one of the hardest questions to answer when you're running a business because you're so deep into the business, you're so deep into your venture that it becomes difficult to break it down into simple sentences. And I'm going to use an example here in the video, and please tell me if you can see it and hear it clearly, because if you can't, then I won't waste time looking at the video. I'll just explain the concept to you, okay? Now, which organization is this? An organization that says, when this organization was asked the question, what do you do? This organization said, reach the largest daily audience in the world by connecting everyone to their world via our information sharing and distribution platform products and be one of the top revenue generating internet companies in the world. That's a mouthful. Which company is this? You can go off mute and then let me know what you think.
Maybe I'll try. Is it like Facebook or Google?
It could be Facebook, could be Google, but it's not, because as far as they're concerned, they're talking about largest daily audience connecting everyone via information sharing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not Facebook. It could be Facebook, right? But it's not Facebook. Who else can?
Dropbox.
Dropbox, maybe not, but I can see why you're saying Dropbox. And that's the confusion, right? And so when we were asked to help them with their brand, we actually did this analysis for them through Wall Street Journal, where they said, it's so long, what's your story, what do you do? Right? They said world 3 times, right? Mm-hmm. You got reach the largest daily audience in the world, and then everyone to their world, and then be one of the top revenue generating internet companies in the world. So too many. Guess which
Twitter.
Company this is?
Twitter.
It's Twitter, right? So a company that's so successful as a brand still does not have a story that is consistent and unique. Mm-hmm. And that is the challenge that we have. So some people say, but if I already have a big brand, should I bother? And the answer to that is yes, if you think you want to stay long in the market that's going to be increasing with competition for you. That long-term play, the long-term vision is characterized by how unique your story is from day one. You think about Apple, very, very simple. The one word that comes to mind when you think of Apple, other than expensive, is design, right? Apple is about cutting-edge design. and everything they do reflects and absolutely highlights and showcases design. And so when you think about the question, what do you do as a business? What are you up to? What are you offering? I want us to watch this video, and please, again, stop me if you can't see it, because I don't want to waste time. I want you to watch this video and listen to this highly successful internet company struggling to explain what they do, okay?
It's here that Jeff and Craig launched Razorfish, which is now worth $4 billion. One of the most successful companies on the web. Successful at what? Good question.
We've asked our clients to recontextualize their business. We've recontextualized what it is to be a services business.
You know, there are people out there, such as myself, who have trouble with the word recontextualize. Tell me what you do in English.
We provide services to companies to help them win.
So do trucking firms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right. Absolutely.
What is it you do?
And our talent is to do a certain thing, whereas the trucking firm.
But what is it you do?
We radically transform businesses to invent and reinvent them.
That's still very vague.
Business strategy.
Translation: teaching established companies how to make more money and reach more customers through the internet, or something like that. Example: they helped design the internet website for Charles Schwab, the brokerage firm. Online trading earned Schwab a fortune in commissions, and our two friends at Razorfish got more than a thank you note.
Okay, any reactions to that video?
It lagged a bit for me, so I didn't actually get. It was lagging. I could see it, but it was lagging.
Right. Okay. So should I play that again? It's a really good video, but should I play that again? Was it lagging for you guys as well?
No, it wasn't lagging for me. I was able to see it, and I thought actually that it brought out a very I think that it brought out a very important point that I keep seeing especially in our teams and the way that the teams pitch themselves when they present during their interviews. Whenever you ask them like what they're doing, they don't know where to start or how to provide a concise information when it can be so easy. So yeah, I think that video was very interesting and it's a quite comical way of putting it through too.
Exactly. So Aisha, would you like me to play that again for you? I'm going to try it one more time.
I mean, I got the gist of it.
Okay. All right.
I've actually attended a course that on storytelling where we have a one-liner now, and our one-liner is helping farmers farm better with tailored agricultural expertise and access to market. Still trying to narrow that down even further.
Very good.
Previously, we had something that was a bit more. So we had empowering in our one-liner, which, you know, my coach was like, that sounds too political. I have gone through these.
Okay, great. No, that's really useful, Aisha. Thanks for sharing. So the question then is, why is it important to have that really short, concise, crisp, story about yourself, your message, your brand positioning, sentence, that line, that construct? Why is it important? And there's a scientific reason for it. So all of our brains, in the front of our brain, there is something known as the prefrontal cortex. That part of the brain is where all the judgment happens. You judge what you want to own, what you want to take in, and what you want to reject. And the brain makes that decision in the first 8 to 12 seconds. That's it. And if that part of your brain decides that it's not important for you, you just completely ignore it. It just goes right from one ear and out the other ear. And it's such an important function that if your story does not grab their attention in the first 8 to 12 seconds, it's like any other story, right? You haven't broken through. And it's really important to keep that in mind. As you build your story out, as you build your brand statement out, you have to think about, how can I make it crisp, so crisp that in the first 12 seconds to a minute, there's a hook. Now, the psychologists go on to say that in a meeting where somebody has given you the gift of time to meet them, you pay back that gift, or you acknowledge the gift by coming in prepared, and they will give you 2 minutes before they start fidgeting with their phones, or they start looking at their notes, or they just are generally distracted. In the 2 minutes of the first 2 minutes of the meeting, if you're not able to give them a reason to listen to you for the next 18 minutes, you've lost them. And I've had meetings where I've had to politely tell people after 5 minutes that I have my next meeting, right? Only because I just couldn't get through their story. And it's really important to understand how the mind works as you craft your story, because 2 minutes is really important. And finally, people process information best in story form, which is why we believe that your 2-minute pitch for your brand needs to be a story, needs to be something that's real, that's human, that people can connect with as well. There's a guy called Professor Dr. Richard Feynman, and he's a famous professor of physics in Britain. And one of the things that he's most famous for is his ability to break down master's level content in a way that freshmen can understand it. So in his own words, he says, if a topic cannot be explained to a freshman, then it's not fully understood by the professor. Think about it. If you cannot explain what you do to your spouse, to your family members, to your grandparents, who have no idea what you do, and many of us simply say, yeah, we work in a computer company. And for them, they think you're repairing computers because you can't explain what you do, right? What do you do? Oh, I'm in a technology company. What is that, right? So if you can't explain what you do in a very simple way to a freshman, you don't know what you're doing. And imagine, we spend almost 12 to 16 hours a day doing things we can't explain to somebody else. And then we expect people to buy from us. That is what we're trying to solve for. We want to create stories that stick. We want to create stories that grab people's attention and stay in their memories way longer than they remember you. Your story has to stand. And that's what you owe your company. That's what you owe your initiative. There are 4 parts to a good story. The first part is it has to be clear. It has to be something that's memorable. It has to be compelling, meaning people should want to sit and say, okay, so what's next? How do you do it? Why did you start it? Who have you done this for? They feel compelled to ask more questions because your story is so unique. And yet you try to make it so concise that you don't take too much of their time. Because once they have heard your story and they've understood and they're convinced by it, where you use data, you use anecdotes, you use credentials, once they're convinced, they're with you for life. Whether they buy it or not, whether they buy your service or not, they're with you for life because they'll remember you in a way that's unshakable. And that's what we always encourage, especially startups, to think about. So what? Who cares? Please write this question down as the third question for the day. Your brand story should be able to answer the question, so what? Who cares? Who is it for? Why should they care about your story? What difference or benefit are they going to get out of your story, out of what you have to offer? And that's such a critical question when you're trying to make a story clear and sticky. And there's a lady by the name of Nora Ephron. She's a leading New York Times journalist. Now she's retired. She went to journalism school. And when in her school, they gave her a short story like this. And they said, craft a headline. I want you to think about this as you hear me read the headline. And then I want you to tell me what the headline would be. There's no right or wrong answer, but I'm just going to try and demonstrate a point. The sentence is, Principal Kenneth Peters announced today that the Beverly Hills faculty will attend a seminar next Thursday in Sacramento about new teaching methods. Among the presenters will be an anthropologist, Margaret Mead, college president Robert Maynard Hutchins, and California Governor Edmund Pat Brown. What's the headline for this story? Remember, this story is for the students. It's a student newsletter. And in the student newsletter, this is your story. This is your news item. What is the headline in that story that people will read and that your target audience will embrace? Anybody?
Anyone? You can write down your answers in the chat box too.
Oh, we have Aisha raising hand. Aisha,
okay.
would you like?
Go ahead, Aisha.
I was just about to type. New teaching methods, new anthropology teaching methods.
Okay, that could be a possible headline. Which remember, it's a newsletter for students, right? And you're saying the headline for this story could be new teaching methods. Okay. Anybody else? New ways to explain old stuff. Okay. Who do you want this story to be read by?
It's for faculty members, right? Students?
No, it's not for students. It's for students, yes. Right? So you want students to read this story. What will grab their attention?
Maybe studying less, reading less.
Okay, good try. So let me give you what the real the popular answer. None of the answers are wrong, right? There's no wrong answers. The popular answer to this was next Thursday is a holiday. It's for the students. They want to know why it's a holiday, right? And they're excited. They think, wow, it's a holiday in the middle of the week. And they look at it and they want to read it because they wanted to find out why it's a holiday. And then they talk about new teaching methods that their teachers are going to be trained in. So they're all going to go away and the students are going to have a break. Right? That is the level of breakout you have to do with your mind as you start thinking about what should my story be? How can I be unique? How can I grab my audience attention?
But sorry, just on that point, nothing in the article suggests that next Thursday is a holiday.
Correct. But it is implied that the faculty will be attending a seminar next Thursday. The faculty are gone. Who's going to teach?
Okay, fair enough.
And I think the point that's being demonstrated really is for us to come at it from our target audience's mindset. Who are we serving? Who's the sweet spot of our target audience? What do they want the most from what we have to offer? And come at it from there. If you come at it from your product benefit to begin with, they're not going to listen because you're selling them something. But if you come at it from, this is a need that so many people like you feel. Don't you wish that this need could be met easily and accessibly and sustainably? We have the answer to that. So you start with your target audience problem statement or opportunity area in mind, and you bring in your story from that point of view. And that's where it sticks the best. And that's what we're trying to really zero in on. So you have 5 questions that you want to think of when you're thinking about how to craft that headline, how to craft that brand positioning statement. It's who, what, when, where, and why. And it sounds very, very obvious. When you talk about who, you're referring to the audience. What is their pain point? What is their vision? What is their aspiration? What is their wish? What are they trying to get out of life? Right? What are they trying to make a difference in? What are they hoping for? Okay? Hopes, fears, all of that is what. When? When do they need it? 6 months from now? Can you build the aspiration, anticipation? Is it urgent? What's the right time to go to them with it? Where do they need to see this? How are they going to consume it? How are you going to get their attention? By going on what channel, right? And then why do they need to see this? So in a way, it completes that whole circle of the consumer context or the audience context. And that's what we really use as our toolbox to be able to craft that clear the talking points. So always go into meaning before details, because the tendency we have, and Minai was referring to that earlier as well, the tendency we often have is to cram the data of how fast we're going to be growing and the opportunity size of the market and so on and so forth. Just wait with the data. Talk about the human need, the meaning, the human impact that you're wanting to achieve as you work. I'm going to use this video, and it's a slightly longish video. If it lags, please forgive me. But it's a slightly longish video, but it demonstrates very, very succinctly, very clearly, how you can use your opening statement to get people's attention. And I'll break it down for you as we go through it.
Sadly, in the next 18 minutes when I do our chat, 4 Americans that are alive will be dead through the food that they eat. My name's Jamie Oliver. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Essex in England. And for the last 7 years, I've worked fairly tirelessly to save lives in my own way. I'm not a doctor. I'm a chef. I don't have expensive equipment or medicine. I use information, education. I profoundly believe that the power of food has a primal place in our homes that binds us to the best bits of life. We have an awful, awful reality right now. America, you're at the top of your game. This is one of the most unhealthy countries in the world. Can I please just see a raise of hands for how many of you have children in this room today? Please put your hands up. Aunties, uncles, you can continue to put your hands up. Aunties and uncles as well? Most of you. Okay. We, the adults of the last 4 generations, have blessed our children with the destiny of a shorter lifespan than their own parents.
Okay. Was the video clear this time, Aisha, for you?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's unpack that video a little bit. And again, this is Jamie Oliver, right? Everybody knows Jamie Oliver. Okay, chef par excellence, right? And so he's come to us with this TED Talk story about what does Jamie Oliver do? He cooks. And yet he's positioned himself as somebody who's very deeply committed to healthy living, right? How does he start the talk? How does he grab people's attention?
By speaking about death are the result of the bad food eating habits.
Correct. So firstly, he grabs people's attention by the oldest trick in the book, because our brains, when you were living in the caves, right, our brains were more interested about stories of danger than stories of peace, because danger is more important to know because you want to save your life. Like, it's about survival. So danger stories, bad stories, which is why newspapers make a lot of money, because the only thing you see in the news is fear. It's about danger. It's about sadness, because people want to read that. They want to know what they're missing or how lucky they are that they're not in it or what danger is coming their way, right? So Jamie Oliver uses, and I'm not saying we should always use that, but that's the most effective way of getting people's attention, focusing on the negative, right? So he says, by the time I finish this speech, so many children are going to die. So many people are going to die because of bad eating habits. Now, if you only did that, that would be fine. At least people are saying, okay, people are going to die, right? But he does something very interesting to bring the audience into that context and get them to own it. And he does it so smoothly, we don't realize it, but it's a big psychological move that he's done there. Because then the story from that point onwards is not his story. It is not his message. It is a message that everybody owns together. What did he do?
He asked the audience how many of them have like children, and then drew that impact and association of that danger to what they're doing and like their loved ones. So bringing out the emotions in them.
Correct. Brilliant, right? And he does that by getting them to do something physical, which is raise your hand. Mm-hmm. And then he realizes that not everybody are parents. There are also some people who don't have children. So he says uncles and aunts. Now that's everybody, right? So he basically says anybody who's got kids in their families, raise your hand. He basically got everybody to do what? To raise the hand and say, I am guilty of not protecting my next generation. from bad food. And then from that moment onwards, everybody is part of that story. And that's powerful, because he's not just standing there and talking about some good eating habits or throwing statistics at somebody, or he's actually got everybody to own that story. And that's the second point I wanted to make. The first point is get the attention of the people. What do you do after you get the attention? Get them to own the story. And it works really well when you gossip, right? What do you tell people when you gossip? I'm only telling you this. It's only for your ears. Don't tell anybody else. And surely what's going to happen? It's called gossip for a reason. It'll surely be shared. And why does gossip get shared? Because people own it. Okay? Did you know? Did you hear? You're the only one I'm going to tell you this. What about children? What are the most favorite 4 words that they like to hear when they're going to bed? Once upon a time, right? The moment they say that, their eyes light up. It's story time. They enjoy it. They know it's going to be fun. Those are really important hooks for you to be able to grab people's attention. Once you have their attention, get them to own the story. And that's really crucial as far as your story building journey is concerned. So once the story is, your story is sticky and it's very clear and people are owning it, you have to make sure that you're able to give them a compelling reason to believe what you're saying. So it's good to get their attention, and then they say, oh, I thought this was a big story. You didn't have anything in it, only a great opening line. Now I'm going to play this video, which basically talks about how you flesh out your story. Remember, you have 2 minutes, right? So you have to spend the first 8 seconds to 15 seconds getting the attention, and then you spend the next about 30 seconds adding in the reason to believe. Okay, so I'm going to play this video, and I'll unpack it for you at the end of that.
NASA is one of our customers that we've been working with for a number of years. NASA had an opportunity to host the single largest online event in world history. They sent a probe into space, a deep impact probe into space to intentionally collide with a comet. They wanted to explore the comet, to do some research. Well, that's pretty cool stuff when they're doing that. And NASA said, you know what? Let's invite the world to come watch. See, NASA has a business model that requires the support of the public. So by getting the support of the public, they get more funding. So it's critical to them to inspire the public. So they said, world, come watch this event, and the world came. On the morning of July 4th, 2005, 250 million people simultaneously watched online while this NASA Deep Impact probe collided with a comet. Absolutely huge event. It actually exceeded the largest event before that had been the Victoria's Secret inaugural fashion show, which a lot of people remember because it was so popular, it crashed the servers and essentially took down the internet while this was trying to go on. This was an even larger event that NASA served. That many people. And the content, 1 billion images, 1 billion pages served up to the public during this event, and it didn't go down. You could just imagine if NASA were to invite the world to come watch, and out in the living room, so that grandpa with the little kid on his knee saying, "Look, you're about to see something that no one's ever seen before," and he gets a 404 page not found because the site can't handle that traffic. That wouldn't be good for NASA. So it's at that moment when the business absolutely fundamentally has to depend on the scale of the solution.
Okay, that's one of my favorite stories, right? That guy is the head of a company that does the most boring thing in the world. Mm-hmm. They supply servers and pipes, data pipes. That's all they do. It's so boring. When you think about that, you think about all the cables that are running in your server room. That's his job. That's all he does. And yet, he brings out his value proposition so beautifully. He says, there's 500 million people, right? There's 500 million people have logged on to one website to watch so many billions of documents and figures and images to be served up to them at the same time. And he goes on to talk about how that event was so successful by comparing it to something else that didn't succeed even at half that quantum, which was the Victoria's Secret launch, okay? And then he goes on to make it even more personal by talking about how he had a grandfather in mind who was sitting and wanting to show his grandson or grandchild that scene or that the space impact, transmission, and he doesn't get a 404 page no found error because the internet did not crash. That is such a powerful way of talking about reliability, scalability, security, availability, right? Of a boring thing like a server. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is a very powerful way of being able to take anything that seems to be boring and mundane but has true value and packaging it in a way that people can relate to immediately. Because everybody relates to Victoria's Secret. Everybody relates to grandfathers. Everybody relates to page no found, right? And then to be able to package all of that in a way that's so simple. He barely spoke for 45 seconds? And you're thinking that guy's got a really solid platform, because if the Victoria's Secret event crashed and his, in spite of being so much bigger, did not crash, that's the guy I want to go with. Mm-hmm. Am I making sense? That's the part of the story, and that's really what we want to be thinking about in terms of our work, right? So if you think about the data for agriculture project, you're thinking about what are the ways in which my target audience will truly appreciate what I'm doing. I'm cost effective, you don't need to pay now, or you pay as you go, because most of these guys don't have ready access to cash. Liquidity is an issue. You talk about how you're making it so much easy for them without having a high-end phone. Just use an SMS, you can control your water pump. Just using your regular SMS, you get your data your soil quality reports. You get forecasts or whatever, right? How can you make it simple for people who actually use your service in a way that's in their context, easy to understand? Okay. Now, I'm going to skip this video because it's slightly long, but I want to go on here. Now, I'm assuming that all of you on the call are at least 30 years and over. When I show you this line, and I want to give you a background to this line. A scriptwriter went to a Hollywood producer and said, I have a story for a brilliant movie. The producer said, I don't have the time, please come back later. He said, no, listen, I can give you the story really quickly. So the producer said, I'm giving you 2 seconds. What's the story? He says, Die Hard on a bus. And he got the producer's support, and they did make a blockbuster movie. What is the name of the movie? Die Hard on a Bus.
I think I remember, but can't remember.
Yes. Fiend? Yes, Fiend. Very good. Right. See, I didn't have to tell you anything about the story. And Minai is like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And that's age gap. So I won't. It's not your fault. I'm too old for you. So Die Hard is a movie series that has basically a guy called Bruce Willis, who's a really old grandpa now. He was young once upon a time, and in the movie Die Hard, he basically had this skyscraper that had taken over by terrorists, and he had to go in alone and save the day. Kill all the terrorists, rescue his wife and all the people, and then save the day. That was Die Hard. Now, it was a popular blockbuster. The producer did not have the time to listen to a news story. But this guy simply said, Die Hard on a bus. Now, how much more incredible is that? Now, all the power and the action that's happening in that one building is moved onto wheels. And he has to get on to this bus and save the bus from exploding and all the people from it before everybody dies. Incredible, so he used the limited time he had to convey his message. And it's so simple. It's Die Hard on a bus. Why did it resonate? For the same reason that it did not resonate for Minai. It resonated because the producer knew Die Hard. It was in the context of the target audience. The target audience quickly resonated with or recognized the example that you were using, the analogy that you were using. So you didn't have to explain anything in addition to saying Die Hard. And then you simply mentioned on a bus, meaning that's the value you're bringing to that context and makes it a whole new powerful package, right? So, again, this doesn't happen easily. The scriptwriter, the screenwriter really had to have thought about his plan, how to package it correctly, what was his punchline going to be, and all of that hard work came into, good effect when he was able to talk about it in that one sentence. So when we look at our story and we look at packaging it, we want to be able to think about how can I keep my value proposition simple and package it in a way that my target audience understands it. If my target audience does not understand Die Hard, I can say whatever I want with Die Hard on a bus, they're not going to get it. In the end, they might end up feeling bad that they don't know what Die Hard was. Okay, so think about how you can bring your target audience into your story. I'm just going to skip this for now, and I'm going to go straight here. Quickly, show of hands, or maybe people on the call can confirm. Have you heard of the word blockchain? Yes, no, maybe. It's not a trick question.
This is one of the programs at our Global Centre, actually. We use blockchain for food traceability.
There you go. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Now, since you offered, that comment, can you explain blockchain to me?
Yes. It's a decentralized ledger technology.
Okay. That's one way of explaining it to a technical guy.
Okay. I got your point. Yeah.
Yes.
It's basically simply replacing the paper with an electronic ledger, with the one exception that whatever you write on that paper, you can never delete it.
Okay, I'm going to stretch you a little bit. That's not the only thing about the distributed ledger. The word distributed means something. What does distributed mean?
Distributed means that it basically works on the proof of work concept, but I don't know.
You're getting technical again.
Okay, let me. Yeah, basically there is no one. I can't explain it.
Correct.
Maybe we can get Aisha to try as well, because she said that she knows.
Maybe making it trustworthy and efficient.
How? The beauty of blockchain is the fact that everybody has a copy of the ledger, and if anybody changes anything, everybody's copy gets updated instantly. So everybody's record is exactly the same, and therefore trust. In fact, it's called trustless. Have you heard of that word? So blockchain is trustless. It is not about trust, actually. It's the opposite of it, which means you don't need to trust anymore, because what I have is the exact same copy as somebody else. So I don't have to blindly trust you to make the correct update. Anything you do, I will get the same copy. That's the promise of blockchain. Now, I can assure you, and I've been doing this for a while now, even technologists cannot explain blockchain without thinking about it a little bit. Suppose I asked somebody, who made blockchain? The most common response is Sakamoto did. And the answer is no. There is no Sakamoto. Sakamoto is an imaginary persona. In fact, there is a school of belief that says that blockchain is a result of AI. AI created blockchain, not human beings. Human beings are learning to use blockchain. So I'm going to put all the theories to a side for now. And I'm going to go back to, how do you explain blockchain intelligently? And so we worked with our head of blockchain technology. We actually, ragged him a little, we bullied him a little. We said, stop being technical, make it simple, make it simple. And then we brought in a creative team to help make the story very simple, to explain distributed ledger technology, DLT, in a very simple way. So watch this video, and then if you don't have an aha moment, please tell me. Because if you have an aha moment, then that's fine. That's what's meant to happen. Okay, so let's watch the video and we go from there.
Now, it's really hard to describe a database system to someone. You can't really show a great demo of data moving through a database. But one of the things that, one way to think about it is with this database. So a Rubik Cube is actually a decently powerful database. there's more than 40 quintillion combinations of a Rubik Cube. And if I handed one out to all of you and said, turn to the person on your left and turn to the person on your right and form your own new imaginary business ecosystem, you are now the middle office representatives who are supposed to align your data between your two counterparties. And I said, go ahead and do that. Now, some of you may smirk or squirm and we could think about it, but actually, we could teach the algorithms to solve this and have you align that data. We could build processes, we could build apps to help do that. And it's not a bad analog for what happens every day in our middle and back office functions across any business. We're constantly aligning the data with our counterparties upstream and downstream. And it's roughly about this hard, often. Now, imagine a world where this was based on a blockchain-based system. This is what it would look like. The data would always stay in sync. As one data element moves, all of the copies of the data that everyone was accessing would move in sync. We would eliminate the need for reconciliation. We would no longer need to message data back and forth. We can be confident that we're all always looking at the exact same thing. And that's the power of the blockchain-based technology. And this is the simplest way that I've been able to show what it would feel like to participate in a blockchain-based system.
Wow.
Aha moment? Yeah.
Wow.
It's just so absurdly simple, right? Then you think, oh yeah, I know what a Rubik's Cube is. I know, how to explain this now. So now if somebody talks about blockchain, you cannot but explain this method. This is the simplest way to talk about it. And you'll even sound so intelligent, people are like, yeah, exactly, that's exactly what blockchain is. And even if you don't know how the technology works, you've got a technologist excited about it because now you're giving them a way to explain this to people. We're actually using this in SUTD, we're using it in NUS, we're using the same analogy. That was getting a bit boring because everybody's using the same thing. We probably have to think of another way of explaining it. But it's such a simple way of describing such an important but complicated technology that people are still discovering. Not everyone's really fully understood it, right? And so think about how you can make your story something that people can resonate with, something people can take away, something that people can explain in a very simple way using everyday objects, like a Rubik's Cube, for example, right? It could be anything, right? And then finally, what we want to really be doing is using analogies and stories and anecdotes. By that I mean, when you have a story to tell people, they won't challenge it if it's your own story. They may challenge it if you say, I heard somewhere, because that source might not be true, might be questionable. But when they look at the story from the point of view of your experience, that always carries more value, which is why people like Jack Ma, people like, Elon Musk, right? When they start talking about something, it's their story. You cannot but help accept it because they're sharing with you a piece of their life. And as startups and as ventures, you guys have a powerful position really to be able to bring that authenticity by bringing your story and to make it something that's very convincing. So I just want to play this video to demonstrate that. It's a very simple video, but it demonstrates the point brilliantly.
Once upon a time, at the age of 24, I was a student at St. John's Medical College in Bangalore. I was a guest student during 1 month of a public health course, and that changed my mindset forever. The course was good, but it was not the course content in itself that changed the mindset. It was the brutal realization the first morning that the Indian students were better than me. You see, I was a study nerd. I loved statistics from a young age, and I studied very much in Sweden. I used to be in the upper quarter of all courses I attended, but in St. John's, I was in the lower quarter. And the fact was that Indian students studied harder than we did in Sweden. They read the textbook twice or 3 times or 4 times. In Sweden, we read it once and then we went partying. And that, to me, that personal experience was the first time in my life that the mindset I grew up with was changed. And I realized that perhaps the Western world will not continue to dominate the world forever.
So here's this super smart guy, right, who's talking about differences in approach to education between two entities. What are the two entities he's comparing? And what's the experience that he's talking about?
Anyone want to give it a go? Andrea, maybe we've not yet heard you speak.
What was the professor talking about? Comparing. What is he comparing?
Yeah, the university in Bangalore and the education system in Sweden.
Correct. So East and West, to keep it very simple, right? The East approach of education in the East versus the approach of education in the West. And the point he was making was how there's been this major shift in the way education was, perceived and approached. Where earlier in the West it used to be so, deep and so rich in terms of how the education system worked. But of late, over the years, he's seen that shift. Now, if he said that research shows that education is shifting, okay, whatever, right? I mean, maybe some research shows. And I always talk about how if you torture data enough, it'll tell you what you want to hear. Okay? So a lot of times when people quote data, is because they've tortured the data too much. But if it's your own experience, it's way more convincing. It's way more authentic. So as you build your story, part 4, try and bring in your own experience. Try and bring in your own story. Because that's what people are going to buy. People are not going to buy your, data or your research as a standalone, but it'll be even more attractive if it's your own story. And that's something that we always encourage our people to work with. Now, finally, before I open this time for some sharing, I want to share this longish video. When you're watching this video, I want you to look at a couple of things here. I want you to look at how he structures his time. So he's got 20 minutes, and he structures his first 3 minutes in a way that sets up the 20 minutes. Okay? He breaks the talk down into 3 parts, and he tries to get people to understand the message in a very simple way. But he does that in the beginning of his talk. And we're going to look at the beginning of his talk, and I want to see if we manage to catch that as he walks through it. Okay?
Good morning, Ariba Live. It's great to be with you today. You can't fix what you can't see. Today, there's $145 billion of MRO inventory alone sitting inside of your companies. And 70% of that will never get used. That's $100 billion in waste. The main reason why? Businesses everywhere lack a clear line of sight when it comes to their indirect materials. It reminds me a lot of the challenge that many in this room faced when it came to our direct materials side. Think of it this way. Direct materials are like the garage in your house. It's high profile. People are in it all the time, and it's core to your operation. And over the past decade, the people in this room, procurement, have done a masterful job of cleaning up years of clutter and neglect in that garage. We partnered with technology companies like Ariba to help give us that clear line of sight so we could see the mess for ourselves. We rolled up our sleeves and applied some good old-fashioned elbow grease to do the cleanup. And then we put business process in place to be sure that the cleanup would stick. And it worked. The garage is now spotless. And as a result, your companies are asking your procurement functions to tackle the biggest challenges that your organizations have, not just the biggest challenges that your departments have. And that is a profound shift in the perceived value of procurement inside your companies. All of us should take a great sense of pride and satisfaction in that. But just as we're ready to step into the living room, sit down on that comfy sofa, kick our feet up, and crack open the celebratory beverage of our choice, that's when our spouse walks into the room. Says, honey, great job cleaning up the garage. Now when do you get into the attic? The attic is indirect materials procurement. Think about your attic. It's out of the way. If it's like mine, it's been neglected. The light bulb hasn't been replaced in years, so you can't see what's going on up there. Anytime you need to access the attic, you take your stuff that you're going to put away, you open up the door, you shove them up there real fast, close the trap door just as quickly, and hope that things don't come crumbling down on top of it. This is one messy attic. But this attic of indirect materials is the obvious next opportunity for procurement to tackle. But with great opportunity also comes great challenge. Indirect materials are complex. We're talking about thousands of suppliers, millions of SKUs, fragmented and unpredictable demand patterns, and that's just the start. This is one messy attic. And because you can't see what's going on in there, it can be tough to know where to start. Again, you can't fix what you can't see. At MSC, we have a unique point of view on all of this. As an MRO distributor, we sell into the marketplace everything from work gloves to abrasives to the most advanced metal cutting tools that are used in manufacturing. And in doing so, we partner hand in hand with procurement to take cost and to take time out of the supply chain.
Okay. So quick discussion, if that's okay, in terms of that talk. Now, again, this is another extremely boring function. It's called procurement. Everybody hates procurement because they just don't ever manage to get stuff done right? And it always costs too much. There are too many approvals in the system, and yet they're such a crucial function, right? So this is about how procurement as a function becomes transparent, becomes clean, and becomes manageable in the long term. A user of a procurement tool like Ariba is actually making that speech. And what was that one line that he started and ended his speech with? I am a school teacher, you know.
Anyone? You can write it down if you're shy. If not, I think VC might start pointing out names, and then you have no choice. You can't run away.
And they can hang up, that's for sure.
Come on, don't be shy. Anyone? Otherwise, Arman, maybe?
No, I think I'm not the best candidate to answer this question. Sorry.
So, the sentence was, you can't fix what you can't see. Okay? And then to explain the complicated concept of the procurement team, or the function, he uses an analogy. What is the analogy he uses? To explain the procurement function. For example, for blockchain and distributed ledger technology, the analogy that David Street used was the Rubik's Cube. In this case, what was the analogy that he used to explain procurement as a function? Anyone? Which is why I prefer in-person sessions, because then people get what's being shared. Otherwise, because of technology and the distance, it becomes difficult. So the analogy uses is of a house, the garage, and the attic on top. And these are everyday things. If that man was talking about procurement in the regular way, it would have been so boring that nobody would have been able to relate to it. He took it out of the context that is so boring, made it everyday, made it something that everybody relates to. Everybody needs to clean their garage if you have a garage. Everybody understands that attic is never cleaned and does need to be cleaned at some point. And so for him to be able to use those analogies in a way that everybody can understand and make the overarching point, which is you can't do dash if you can't dash. Right? You can't fix what you can't see. And I think that's the essence of being able to build a communication plan. And if you guys are interested, I will share this draft with you so you can use that as your story building or storytelling construct, and then you can move forward from there. As you talk about becoming a storyteller, I want to just quickly talk about a little bit about how you structure your story, right? Understand your audience. That has to be your first thing. If your audience is not understood, or if you don't know who your audience is, your message is going to be generic. So always take the time and the trouble to understand who the audience is. What makes them tick? Are they married? Are they divorced? Did they have a major accident? Or are they gold medal winners? Or do they have some major recognition that they have had in the past? Are they national athletes? Did they go to Harvard? Understand who your target audience is. And finally, remember, it's not about you. Your story should be about them. I started the session talking about that, and I'm almost coming to the end of the session talking about that as well. Remember, your story is not about you, it's about your target audience. They don't listen to your words as much as they listen to your emotion. The emotion and your voice brings color to your target audience. It's really important to remember that, right? So there's body, there's voice, and your content is only 7%. So you can prepare the best presentation in the world, but if you're not going to deliver it in a way that your target audience is going to embrace and use it, it's going to be useless at the end of the day. So when you talk about some communication strategies and impact of culture, I won't go into this on this call. It's really going to be too heavy, but I will end to with a summary. Be clear about why your audience should care. So what? Who cares? Identify your core message.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Can I intervene at this moment? Because I think you made a very interesting point in terms of the talking to the different stakeholders. And I think it will be interesting maybe to hear your insights in terms of how shall startups that will be visiting these country offices, they're going to speak to very different stakeholders. Like they'll speak to government, they'll speak to farmers, they'll speak to private sector. How to tailor their message to better address their needs and to really kind of to make their technologies attractive to those stakeholders.
What's the last question again? How do you make
in
it
other
attractive?
words, yes, they need to convince the stakeholders in the countries that they're going to visit that their technology solution meets their needs. How to do that when you have a very different stakeholders?
So that's such a great question, and I think some of the social ventures that I work with, so I should have introduced myself a little bit earlier. I work with social ventures across the region in 5 areas, including women, education, financial inclusion, health, and academic. I mentioned education before, food security. And I think for me, these 5 are really important areas from a social point of view. And none of those social ventures operate in cities. They operate in rural areas. So you really have to get your storytelling, your ability right, because people are so simple, they are so everyday, they don't understand technology. You have to be able to break it down. And when I talk to social ventures and startups and help them craft their message, we start with the simple premise that you're not building the story for you, you're building it for the other person. And the other person is a human being. Human beings can feel, human beings can sense, human beings can emote. And it's really important for you to know that when you're going to tell something to somebody, you have to tell it in a way that they're going to own it. So how do you do it in a rural place? You obviously have to do it in a vernacular. So you can't arrive in a $1 million car and in your finest suit and have a suitcase and open your PowerPoint presentation and use a projector. You might get their attention because all of that looks fancy, but your message will get lost, right? I've worked with social ventures who I've gone with them actually to villages where we literally use the ground, the floor, the earth, where we have sand and we use long sticks to draw out things in the way they are. That's how they explain things to their kids, right? To draw out the message in images and in figures that they're able to recognize. We do this in the vernacular, in a language that they understand. It's not in English. We make sure that if we can't understand the language, we take a team member with us who knows the language. We make sure that the decision maker is made to feel important, especially in a rural setting. If you are making the village headman or the village official feel like he is an important person, the people around him will listen to your message more, because that is the construct in the rural place, where the village headman is the most important person. And if a foreigner or an outsider comes in and the village headman is made to feel important, all of them feel made important as well. They all feel mutual respect because you're giving give this person the respect. And anything the village headman says, yes, we will do, everybody will do without questioning. So I'm not answering your question directly, but I'm giving you hints on understand your target audience, understand the dynamic. You have to be in their context, which means use their language, dress like them, don't be intimidating or overpowering in the way you come across. Make your story fit their context. You cannot take them on a journey with you if you don't start with where they are. You can't pull them to where you are. You only can bring them along with you. I hope that made sense, Andres.
Thanks very much. This is exceptionally good answer. Thanks.
Thank you. My pleasure, Ahmed. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, so I'll just complete the summary then. So get their attention, use stories and anecdotes and analogies. I spoke about analogies as a way to crunch your story down in a way that's simple to understand. Now focus on the message first, worry about the PowerPoint and the props later. Use simple language that they can understand. Avoid big words, avoid jargon, avoid abbreviations, acronyms, right? Especially in the social sector. Have 3 or 4 messages. People won't remember more than 2, but have 3 max, right? The 2 messages they remember should be good enough for them to come back to ask for your service or your attention or your help. And then give them a sense of how long your talk is going to be and how you're going to cover those points, and then give them a reason to call you back. That's called the call to action. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. I want to hand back to you, Minai and Ahmed, and if you guys have any comments, happy to take any questions at this stage.
Thanks so much, VC. I think that was really a great